Hello, I wanted to bring Myopia to you because as an artist, I've always made very small things. It's a little bit of a joke as a wood firer, filling these kilns with lots of pots that I end up wadding a lot because my pots are so small. I do make some larger things, but my favorite things to design definitely are for the hand, about the hand, playing with the weight of things. And I just really like that scale, and um, it seems to make sense for me. So originally, this exhibition idea would be in a gallery, and it would be where the pedestals would maybe be chin high, so the pot is brought to your face, or it is displayed in a way that interactions allowed, so you can pick them up, flip them over, feel the presence in the hand. But right now during the pandemic, it felt important for a different reason. As I've spent so much time at home, the objects around me have kind of grown in weight or grown in presence. And specifically, some of the smaller objects that I use on a daily basis, I'm thinking about them more, I'm contemplating them more, enjoying them more. So I just wanted to bring some of the small works that I've made to you guys. Some of them I'm thinking about revisiting. They're not in any chronological order. It's just, yeah, and enjoying this idea of having a show for my own studio. So I hope you all enjoy. Thank you. Okay, so I'll start off by talking about these two little dishes here. I call these memory cards. They're two of hundreds that I made. I would repeat patterns on occasion, but most of the time they'd be different patterns. Um, I think of them as cards because of the scale of them, but also that idea of a memory being as flimsy and thin sometimes as a card is. I started making these when it was, I guess, going into my last year of graduate school. My grandmother and father both passed away within a couple months of each other. And before my grandmother passed, she had dementia. So I had been already thinking about how things shift with your ability to understand your surroundings and trying to use that idea with these impressions. So this one you can see the wood ashes filled, but this is clear. This is a clothespin. So I've just taken the clothespin and created a pattern and essentially thinking about how I can take the clothespin in a way that no longer references the clothespin, right? So taking something really familiar and making it unfamiliar. And they are designed, they can be hung either on the point or the flat side. So if someone has multiple of them, you can organize them. But in a lot of ways, thinking about, all the death around us, I've thought way more about my dad in the past year than I have in a long time. And with that, thinking about these cards and they've definitely gained importance and gained kind of a reflection for me. Okay, here is a cream and sugar. And really I want to talk about the spice or sugar dish more than the creamer. The creamer I just bring in because of how much this is the first iteration of the pouring vessel that I make now that's a lot taller and articulated, but this is the spout originally came from these little dishes here. I was originally making these using clay and then a carpenter's nail. And so the carpenter's nail, that squared shape, is what brought out the Morton salt spout for me. Yeah, so, but this is the one that I kind of wanted to talk about because I've always been interested in the materiality of clay. And when I was teaching at Western Kentucky University, they had a foundry in the sculpture department. So I worked with a student who he cast some of these lids. So I made them in wax and then he cast them in bronze. So this is a bronze lid. And what I love about this is thinking about, it kind of clears up some of what I think about on a regular basis about clay, but maybe when you have these two together, the lid is heavier than the pot. And so part of me loves it now. At the time, I was like, oh man, this lid, this itty bitty lid just feels so much more important than this pot. And so I didn't go forward with it because I wasn't that happy with it. But now, I don't know. It's somehow, I'm still thinking about it, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah, I hope to bring in other materials more than I do right now with what I make. I'd like to mix it up a little bit more. So there you have it. This is another example of two materials. So at the same time, when I was at Western Kentucky University, the sculpture professor, he would often go do iron pours. Maybe it was like once a year, once every other year. And so one year he was nice enough, I sent him with one of my salt cellars and he cast it in iron. So this is another, like, I know you all can't pick them up, but the weight, this is probably 4 or 5 times the weight of one of these. And when I, make these, I make it solid. So it's built solidly with a mold, and it goes thick to thin. So as you get to the center, it gets to be a more appropriate wall thickness for something this size. This one I've held on to for a while. I really loved the surface of this salt cellar. And it's hard to know, if I were to send this off to an exhibition, it's such a small piece that it's really hard to know how to showcase it. So yeah, I just think it's such a lovely one. And this one I really love for different reasons. Again, this is iron. It was cast in a sand mold, a sand and wax mold, I think it is. But you can see the texture of the sand, it just relates so much to clay. And then there where it's getting ground off, I just love it. I never treated it, so it's a little bit kind of grown a patina or rust with time. You can kind of see on the edge. And it's just, in the exhibition, the idea of these side by side so that someone can pick them up at the same time or one after the other and really kind of think about what maybe they originally thought of as heavy for clay compared to something that's the same size and a different material. Here is a dessert bowl. And this bowl almost didn't make the exhibition because it's so big. I had kind of given myself a 4-inch cutoff for the exhibition, and because I make that many small things, that this actually have more than what you all are seeing in terms of different forms. But this for me relates so much to the hand that I could not put it in. It's one of those bowls, sometimes I refer to it, well, most of the time I refer to it as a dessert bowl, but I often think of it more like a hand bowl because of how it fits in your hand. It also is, opposite the salt tiller, where here it goes from thin to thick at the bottom. So thinking about the weight of clay and how it feels in your hand and wanting it to feel really nice, but also playing with what we're taught, which is the wall should be even. On the other side of, it's interesting, it wasn't necessarily part of the original idea. The original idea was definitely more of how it feels in hand. But because of the thicker bottom, it works really well for ice cream because ice cream is really cold, but you can hold it easily. And because there's so much clay down there, it's protecting kind of that temperature shift. And here are two little cups. I call them sippers that I have in this exhibition. This one I made a while ago, and it's one of the few times that in the kiln from rice hulls. So I had nestled this inside something else in rice hulls, and just that metallic luster there at the bottom, and then you can kind of see how it halos into this shimmery gray, and then it goes into this just really beautiful reduction cool red. So that I had never seen anything like that before on with using rice hulls. So I kept this cup for that reason, and it's one of my favorites, just because that's such a unique surface. And then this one is the one that I use all the time. This is my favorite one that I have in the house for drinking a little bit of bourbon at night. And it's also, again, these little sipper cups are so small. This is on the smaller side. I make them similar to a handle where everybody's hand is different. And so I tend to make these a little bit taller, a little bit wider, this size and up. But my preference is the smaller size, even if I'm using ice with whatever beverage I'm drinking. The other thing that, similar with a lot of the small things that I make, I think about, like, I add extra weight to this cup. So even though it is small, it still has a little more weight in it than you'd expect. And the beveled edge at the bottom, I think it looks really nice how it kind of lifts a rather still form off the table. But also, when I'm drinking from it, I found that that's right where my pinky rests and is really comfortable. So these little sippers I still really enjoy making them, kind of giving them a little bit of curve to a slightly straighter wall. This is what I call a spice server, and you can see it's essentially a symmetrical form, so it goes both ways. And the idea originally was thinking just about how I could have an interior space and an exterior space that were completely different but related. So, really wanting to think about um, how the vessel can then turn into the spout. So you have this, and then essentially to use it, you can either use, one hand or two hands to shake out the seasoning, a finer salt. I wouldn't use anything coarse, or sesame seeds, or whatever you end up wanting to kind of sprinkle on something. Um, but it's with a two-part press mold, and one of the things about a press mold is deciding where the seam is. And so here, placing the seam on the diagonal to relate to the interior space or kind of suggest the interior space. And the other bit is where the spout is. So kind of purposely wanting to have that cutout at the bottom on both sides to just say like, hey, there's something going on the other side to maybe help promote that idea of uh flipping it over for someone that maybe wouldn't typically flip something over. This is the beginning of a series that I am still working through, that is also kind of thinking about what is the top or what is the bottom. How can something be displayed or what is its function? So, really just wanting to make an interesting object within all this. And it's one of my favorite things to hear what people think it's used for. Everybody has a different guess, and it's really lovely to hear the ideas that come out of when someone comes to this and is like, what is this for? And I'm always like, that's a really good question. Yeah, because I think a lot of times, whatever we make something for, and our intention is not what or how it's made in the end. And it's some of my favorites, like when I see people using the salt cellars for, homemade jams and jellies, or something that holds a ring or something treasured. Those sorts of things are sometimes the best, better than I could imagine. So. And the last piece in this exhibition I wanted to talk about is this scoop form. This is a brand new form for me. I just have, I've only had one kiln that had any of these in them. And it's really right now the only thing that I make out of soft slab. So I've always really appreciated how when you make slabs or soft slabs and you kind of draw your wire tool through, how it takes those particles in the clay. And so wanting to figure out a way to use that process and leave those marks and have it relate to the design. So this is made with a single slab of clay, and then the template looks a lot like a duck with an open mouth. So here you can see the duck bill essentially. And then as I turn it around, that seam follows all the way to the bottom of the handle, and then I just flip it around. So by bringing the open mouth of the duck, by closing it, that's how I'm getting the lift with the slab. But with it being a thinner slab, this last firing, usually any kind of warping in the kiln, I don't really enjoy. But with these scoops, because they're already kind of a funky little scoop, they don't necessarily have, I just think as an object I'm really enjoying them. They don't necessarily have a specific function, but a lot of them came out with these kind of movements from the slab after the firing that I just really love. I really love that undulation. Yeah, so it's a new way to think about using the kiln.